It is an historic moment filled with prayer, with friendship, with tears, with love, and with connecting as relatives from all cultures.
It means something to us.
Yeah.
We finally have a statue of a beautiful woman that is Lakota.
This is a story that winds its way to a bluff overlooking the Missouri River in Chamberlain, South Dakota in 2016. But it starts long before that.
Well, I think it was after Norm retired in 2000. So I think it was sometime after that that we felt that it was time for us to give back to the state. South Dakota's been good to us.
Unibel and Norm McKee have deep roots in the state.
I'll give you a little history. My great-grandfather brought his family here by covered wagon 2 years after South Dakota became a state. And the McKees have been here ever since.
They found success in the Rapid City car business and wanted to give back.
So Norm did some visiting with Pat Wiss,
a Rapid City landscape architect, and Dr. Dick Gowan, who was then president of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. The McKees eventually decided on what would become Dignity, the 50-foot statue of a young Native woman they donated to the state.
So thank you to Norm and Unibel and the entire McKee family for this wonderful gift to South Dakota.
But first they needed a sculptor, and they knew it had to be Dale Lamphere.
It's all woven together, and we pick up on elements from one another. And
Lamphere's an accomplished sculptor and the state's artist laureate. From his studio outside of Sturgis, Lamphere began thinking about the McKees' idea. He suggested adding a star quilt, a high honor among Plains Indians.
the hope is that sense of honoring the Native culture here in South Dakota is on the rise.
By early 2015, Dignity's final concept was born.
Take this off. There we go.
Lamphere began refining his vision for what would become a 50-foot-tall stainless steel tower. First, on paper,
I start out with the traditional star quilt design.
And then clay. He eventually built a complete scale model of the project.
And you can see the back of the quilt. You know, and so I'm building this on a 1/8 scale out of materials that I'm actually going to use. There's some details that, of course, we just aren't able to accomplish.
In December 2015, the McKees visited Lamphere's studio for an update on the project.
I always joke that I make things up for a living. I just make it up. You know.
And he explained some of his philosophy.
I want to weave the color and the openness and the light and the movement throughout the piece. And we need to make something here that is a visually compelling object that uses the design and material vocabulary of our time, and something that honors the Native culture that still thrives in this region. I grew up on a ranch, and I learned there to pay attention and think about how am I going to get this tractor running. It's 3 miles back to the barn. What can I do here that might work? And of course, I've had to reach a little higher technical level than that. But I do enjoy the engineering and the technical aspect and the how are we going to do this. And when Norm mentioned this to me in the beginning and we started working on this, I mean, it seemed like a pretty daunting task. And I didn't, as I say, wanted to just repeat myself. I wanted to innovate, and it's an opportunity to grow and to learn something myself. And so when those dark moments come and I think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? I do trust that if I pay attention and I give my best effort, then the creative force of the universe will rise up and help me out here, you know. And sometimes, you know, you're just literally pleading, you know, for some kind of insight. And that's the creative process. I mean, scientists and artists over the centuries have spoke of that. The thing that's exciting for me on this, as well as the technical aspect, is the symbolism of it. I mean, I grew up on a ranch about 3 miles from Bear Butte, and I have always had a real respect for the native culture, and I feel like we have so much that we need to do to create a kind of equitable society. So it's an opportunity to speak to that in a positive way.
Meanwhile, work had already begun on the structure itself, east of Rapid City near Scenic, on the Spirited Winds Tatanka Buffalo Ranch. The first thing to go up was the heavy-duty stainless steel tripod designed by Albertson Engineering out of Rapid City. Engineer Aaron Hartwell conceived the structure from a humble introduction.
They brought in about a 1/50th scale model to our office in Rapid City, and we were looking at this model and we realized, what can we do for a structure inside of this thing that, when you're looking at it, it's only a few feet tall, but in real life it's going to end up being 50 feet.
Hartwell designed a structure that could handle the massive weight of the sculpture as well as the torque created by the wind on the quilt.
I call it a tripod sitting on top of a torque box with a kind of an umbrella frame turned sideways that mates up to the torque box. It's like kind of get all your twisting loads from the blanket itself kind of congregate down to this torque box which sits on the tripod.
It all requires significant fabricating expertise. Enter Tom Tropple, proprietor of the Spirited Winds Tatanka Ranch and Lamphere's longtime collaborator.
I only work with him on the big pieces. I mean, if they got to be 20 foot tall or better, or I don't get involved in them.
That'll keep me going for a minute.
Okay. You mean drive it over there for you?
No, I got it.
I couldn't get it to move, I don't know.
I spent 20 years welding tanks together, and as a welder on that, you know, you build a big tank, but that's nothing, and then you build something like this, and you can, you know, take your grandkids to it and show them, you know, or their grandkids will probably be able to see this same piece, and I mean, it's exciting to me. My dream would be to do a 90-footer. I've always enjoyed that part of it, that, you know, we will push to get that next scale that's a test of our abilities, if you want to call it. I mean, and this is testing us. This is putting us to the test, you know. We will, because it's big. It's a big piece. I'll settle for this 50-footer, and then I'll probably retire. Well, I can't crawl around like I used to. I'm starting to feel my age, I guess.
every step of the way has its own set of challenges. I mean, there's technical challenges at first in designing a stable structure.
Yeah. Need to get Sparky up there.
Yeah, let's
Should
try
we get
it
Grant
that
up
way.
here?
If we can get the two together, then we'll know we don't have a kink in it.
Go ahead and grab the Grant then.
Yeah.
And then the creative aspect of resolving the figure and making it be a whole cloth. I mean, everything has to look like it's part of the same piece. I can't change horses in the middle of the stream, so I have to maintain the same kind of design sensibility throughout.
Back to where it is.
And now, of course, the challenge of actually constructing the thing. And there's always things that we have to modify along the way. There are always visions that don't quite match up with reality.
Back to where it is.
We're putting the perimeter around the star. This constitutes the blanket that makes up the quilt. And we're working on our final passage of where the wind catches the quilt and creates the ripples in it. So it's a real critical movement in the piece. And we're wrestling with it pretty mightily at this point.
I'd say just tack her where she sits. And you know, I mean, this other stuff here, I think you don't need to push on it at all.
We have to form pipe around the perimeter of the quilt to attach our metal to it.
That's getting there. You're on perfect straight.
And just getting the pipe in the right configuration, it's got to flow beautifully and look like it's windswept.
Let me try this. Let me try this.
We've been the better part of today on a passage that's about 20 feet long, and so it's been quite a task here. But we're going to get it before the sun goes down.
He said he wanted to come out here for a sun trip.
Central to Lamphere's vision for the work was the face of dignity. It was meticulous work. First, Lamphere had a model, Senia Trujillo.
I don't know, it was cool.
Then he made and remade a clay mock-up. Next came a full-size styrofoam head.
We have to cut some of this off maybe to do that?
I don't know.
And from there, working in his studio with Andy Rolchin, they fabricated the more than 100 pieces of stainless steel that would make up the face and head. And periodically in the process, they would haul the head out and raise it up in the air so that Lamphere could look at it from a distance.
What do you think?
That looks nice. I like it.
Expression happens around her mouth and in her eyes. Those are the primary things. And I'm working now on the lips and trying to get them real well defined so that they have strength and beauty to them, and the focus on the eyes needs to be just right.
And do you have to see it from a distance from where
I do, yeah. I'm going to walk back now and take a good look.
And then it was back down and more work.
The thing that I'm trying to do is create a real presence in this sculpture. You know, I have to at some point let go of my preconceived notions and let her have her own life. And my job as an artist is to somehow find a way to express a real presence, a real life in this figure. And that's always a subtle process. Let's let it down, Andy. I want to do a little drawing.
And he worked right up to the very end.
We're making some changes just today at the final end game on this face that bring it better balance and a little more expressive quality. And then of course we have to fill all the gaps. I mean, this is a welding, fabricating process we're involved in, and you want to keep the bugs and the rain and all of that out of the piece, so we have to be real careful to seal it up.
There was scarcely time to get the head from the studio out to Scenic and placed on the statue before Dignity had to head to Chamberlain for the dedication, but Lamphere found a moment for reflection.
Real pleased how the face turned out.
Though Lamphere was happy with the way the face turned out, there was still a long way to go, and the clock was ticking towards the September 17th dedication.
Well, yeah, it's been 3 years now in the making since we first talked about this, and I've worked with structural engineers and native advisors and a great crew of helpers here, and we're making it happen.
Lamphere scaled the statue from the inside to go up to the neck to make final preparations for the head. And finally, with less than 2 weeks before the dedication, everything was ready to put the head on Dignity. And finally, it was on, but the job wasn't finished. Lamphere had to position it just right.
You know, I don't know, whatever it's catching on, it needs to come forward.
The McKees were on hand to share the special day.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I really appreciate it. I really do.
It's a great opportunity for me.
Yeah. Well, it's been a good association. Yeah. Well, my whole heart is in this. I mean, my whole life has been building up to points like this, and I want to give it everything I have, and I am. I mean, I'm 20 pounds lighter than I was last winter. You know.
I told the guys up at the shack, I said, after the dedication, I'm going to take 2 weeks off and just come up here.
But for now, it was back to work. The next priority was getting the hands on. Hands are very expressive on a sculpture, and Lamphere wanted to make sure he got them right.
It's a good method to work from. Basically how to get the Statue of Liberty. And on the tips here we'll have a pipe here that extends this fingertip out, and then we'll... Can't do the impossible. No. And I think we'll actually make it, and who knew, you know? I mean, it comes as something of a surprise to us as well. And I've got one of those. Well, I don't see where it is, but
There were still more pieces to weld on in the neck and shoulder area, and that before the whole piece could get sandblasted. And of course, there still remained the tricky problem of actually getting Dignity 200 miles to Chamberlain. Next up for Dignity was a thorough sandblasting. The process removes the shiny finish from the stainless steel and gives the sculpture a luster. It also gives Lamphere a counterpoint to the polished elements he'll add to Dignity later. All this while the clock is ticking towards the dedication deadline, which is keeping Lamphere on his toes.
well, coordination is everything at this point. I mean, we've been on conference calls with the DOT and the Highway Department and the Governor's Office and all the other interested parties, and everything is lined up. We've got it scheduled out to the last minute at this point.
And then on September 9th, just 8 days until the ceremony, it was time to drop Dignity from her perch. Get her ready for the road.
If I could fly, that'd be pretty handy.
The next day broke bright and sunny, but for Lamphere, there was a tinge of melancholy.
Nearing the end, we're all we miss her. When she was standing, she was so beautiful and interesting every day, and once we laid her down, we weren't able to see her anymore, and it kind of took away some of our spirit. But it will be up again soon. But you know, I mean, she has a kind of dignity to her now.
The job at hand for the day was to begin welding in place the colored diamonds on Dignity's quilt and bolting in place some of the polished items on her robe.
Yeah. Well, finish up this diamond and then.
It was clear the crew was getting a little weary, but hanging in.
We're pretty ragged, but we're reaching down deep into our reserves to get this project done.
Hey, are you excited about this project?
I am. It's been one of the most challenging projects I've ever worked on, for sure. But it'll be the most rewarding at the same time.
I think it is, yeah.
You know, we're down to the very last day before we head out on the road, and it looks like we're going to make it. And we're delighted and a little bit surprised.
And then it was moving day.
We're doing really well. We're about ready to head out on the highway.
After some last-minute tie-downs and attention to safety details, Dignity was ready to roll.
Okay, good enough. And I'll be behind you, right?
Yeah.
Marbury house movers out of Pier had the task of moving the sculpture from Scenic to its new home in Chamberlain. The The McKees were on hand for the Bon Voyage.
It's an exciting day, and we just pray that she gets there and the whole crew gets there safely. So, goodbye, Dignity from Scenic, and welcome to Chamberlain.
Lamphere was matter of fact.
Well, we've spent years on this creation that's moving down the road today. Well, we're confident we're going to get there in good shape, and we'll be in Chamberlain probably Tuesday night.
But Norm McKee allowed himself to reflect on the meaning of the sculpture.
I just don't know how to say it very well, but it's a very, very big day in our lives. And I think as time goes on, the importance of this will continue to grow and grow and grow.
Water is life. And that's the ultimate.
Dolly Red Elk teaches language arts at Oglala Lakota College. She's also a quilter who advised Lamphere on his project.
When I went to boarding school, it was like I knew no English whatsoever. And had such a difficult time even walking in there. It wasn't home. No one to talk to. I cried. Because every time I wanted to say something, I knew no English, and I had to say it in Lakota, and then we used to get hit for that. It was a painful experience. Excuse me. My prayer is that all the little ones speak their language fluently. I always tell them, this is your language. Don't be ashamed of it. Walk with your language and culture. And you will be strong.